So here we are about to continue with our Countries of the World educational series. And today's country is going to be Saudi Arabia. And I use a few accessories for this. One that I have over here is a National Geographic Atlas of the World. These are like the greatest maps. I had these maps when I was a kid plastered all over my room. Big fold-out ones that would come with the National Geographic magazines. One thing I like about them is that they have, you can see just about every country in kind of a small scale relative to the entire continent that it's on. And then there'll be another map where you can see it in larger scale. So you can start out just by putting it in perspective of where it's located in the world before you kind of drill down on it and talk about the individual parts and the neighboring countries. And then I also have these laminated maps for every continent, which are a little easier to handle for quick reference, and they're convenient. And another thing that I like to use are these books we get from the library. They're called the Enchantment of the World series. They're probably pretty common in most libraries. Our small branch library has about 50 of them. We've used a lot of these so far. And they are really good for getting an overview of the country and getting prepared for the talk, because obviously I don't know everything about every country in the world before I get started, so I have to do a little bit of research. And then the other really useful tool that I use is YouTube, which is an amazing educational tool, but of course you have to do a little research with that beforehand, because for every good, useful educational video, there's about 5 that for one reason or another are not good for teaching kids. So best to do a little research in advance and figure out which videos we're going to use. So I like to get started with a video just to get everybody warmed up and get them kind of a little up to speed on what's going on with the country. So first one we're going to watch is from the Geography Now series, and these are mostly very good videos. They're energetic and informative, and they're pretty general, all-encompassing, and the vocabulary is pretty easy to follow along with. So we'll get started with that one for Saudi Arabia.
Saudi Arabia sits on the Arabian Peninsula in the Middle East, the largest peninsula in the world, and in itself is the 12th largest country in land area at over 2 million square kilometers. The country is bordered by 7 other countries, and keep in mind they also have the King Fahd Causeway, which connects them to Little Bahrain, so technically 8 countries. The country is further divided into 13 regions, with the capital of Riyadh located fairly close to the south center of the country. Riyadh is the largest city and the second largest in the Arab world after Cairo, with over 7 million people. It also has the second busiest airport, King Khaled International. The busiest airport, however, belongs to the second largest city, Jeddah, in the west, with King Abdulaziz International, and they also have the largest shipping port as well. The second largest shipping port belongs to the King Abdulaziz port in the city of Ad-Dammam in the east side, close to Bahrain. Now, although Mecca, the third largest city, is an important place as the holiest city in Islam, they do not have an airport, as they believe the city should be left free of air traffic and planes should not fly above it. Therefore, people wishing to go there usually fly to Jeddah and then take short land transport. The country has a vast road network extending to all other neighboring countries and 4 main rail lines connecting Riyadh to the east and north, with another separate rail line connecting Medina to Mecca in the west. Today, plans for a transnational railway known as the Saudi Land Bridge are underway, as well as the GCC railway along the Persian Gulf, which is supposed to connect them with the other countries along the Gulf like Kuwait and the UAE. However, progress is kind of slow. In addition, the country has about 1,300 or so smaller islands and islets off their coasts. About 89% of them are in the Red Sea and the remaining 11% in the Persian Gulf, but Arabs will tell you it's the Arabian Gulf. Not gonna get into that. Anyway, of these islands, the largest is Khorasan, with its archipelago in the south close to Yemen. There was at one time a dispute with Egypt over the Sanafir Islands, right at the entrance to the Gulf of Aqaba. In 2016, however, Egypt's House Committee and Parliament approved of the transfer of the islands, which kind of angered a lot of people in the Egyptian public, but it still went through. In any case, the move went forward and plans to build a Saudi-Egypt causeway are underway Way, which would officially connect the two countries for the first time since Ottoman Empire years. Key fact to note, the area of modern-day Saudi Arabia formerly consisted of three main distinct regions. The Hijaz in the west, where about 35% of the population lives, the Najd with about 28%, and Eastern Arabia, or Al-Asa, with about 15%. On top of that, Saudi Arabia takes their maritime trading routes very seriously, as about like a fifth of the entire world's oil shipping lanes pass through the incredibly narrow 21-mile wide Strait of Hormuz. We've talked about this before, and it can get pretty intense considering who's on the other side. It's like, hey, dude, you're in my boundary zone.
You're in my buffer.
Yeah. Anyway, back to the civil layout. Saudi Arabia is structured in a unique way that very few other countries can kind of emulate. For one, they are the cornerstone and epicenter of the Islamic faith, holding the two most important sites in Islam, Mecca and Medina. You must be Muslim to enter Mecca. Authorities either check your passports for the religion label if it has one, or they ask you to recite the Shahada, or the Muslim creed. If you don't know anything about these cities, basically, Medina is the burial site of the Islamic prophet Muhammad, and Mecca is not only his birthplace, but it also holds the holiest site in all of Islam, the Kaaba, which is this cube-shaped building in the center of the Great Mosque of Mecca, the largest mosque in the world. It is the duty of every able-bodied and financially capable Muslim in the world to make a pilgrimage here at least once in their life, otherwise known as the Hajj.
There's a couple of really important things about Saudi Arabia. So you guys remember what continent Saudi Arabia is a part of?
Yes.
What continent is it?
It's a part of Asia.
Right. You remember that, Ian? So Saudi Arabia is part of Asia, and the specific part of Asia, what do you call this massive land over here, Cleo?
The Saudi Arabian Peninsula.
It's just called the Arabian Peninsula. Okay?
Because it's next to Saudi Arabia.
Right. Now, Saudi Arabia is called Saudi Arabia because it's part of the Arab world. It's part of the Arabian Peninsula. Everybody on the Arabian Peninsula, or all the native peoples of the Arabian Peninsula, are Arabs. And the wider area that this is considered to be part of is called the Middle East. Okay? But the specific area over here is the Arabian Peninsula. We'll look at it in close-up over here, and what do we see is around Saudi Arabia? What do we see to the north? What countries?
Jordan,
Yep.
Iraq,
Right.
Yemen, Kuwait.
Yemen is to the south, right? So to the
Oman.
south are Yemen and Oman. Okay, these are smaller countries on the Arabian Peninsula.
Plus
Right, and then the main border to the east is water, right? It's the Persian Gulf, and on the other side of the Persian Gulf is Iran. Right, Iran, which has been for a long time an enemy or a rival of Saudi Arabia. And on the west side of Saudi Arabia, we have the Red Sea. And what's on the other side of the Red Sea?
Eritrea.
Right.
Djibouti.
But what continent are those countries part of?
Africa.
Right, Ian. So on the other side of the Red Sea, you have the continent of Africa. So the Arabian Peninsula, it's part of Asia, but it really is the connection between Asia and Africa. The actual connection is where Israel meets Egypt at the Sinai Peninsula. And you remember, of course, why the Red Sea is important, and more important than ever, because you have the Suez Canal that goes through Egypt that allows communication between the Indian Ocean and the Mediterranean Sea, and eventually the Atlantic Ocean. And that's the only way to get from the Indian Ocean to the Atlantic Ocean without going all the way around the southern point of Africa.
Wait, I forgot. So there's pirates here in the Red Sea.
There are pirates historically in the Indian Ocean, kind of off the Horn of Africa, but not really so much currently in the Red Sea. So you don't need to worry about pirates. But yeah, generally around the Horn of Africa, the country of Somalia. So Saudi Arabia itself, a lot of Americans just think it's a big desert. And when they think of Saudi Arabia, they think of just a big desert with some really rich oil sheiks. Sheik is the Arab word for someone like an important person, a leader, and
or a famous general.
yeah, more a leader. Generals will usually be sheiks, and they think of them as really rich because of the money that came from the discovery of oil. But of course, like in all the other countries we learned about, the countries are actually more complicated and different from the way that people who aren't educated tend to think about them. And that's why it's so important to get educated around every country, so that you're not limited by the way that other people think, and you're able to make up your own minds and see for yourself, especially in the countries that we haven't visited. So there is a very large desert in Saudi Arabia. It's mostly in the eastern part of the country. In fact, hardly anybody lives in this eastern province because it's so dry, it gets no rain at all, and very few people can even go there because it's so hot and dry.
Why
However,
can't they just go to where the Qatar is?
well, Qatar is another country, so plenty of people do live there, and that's got a lot of people there.
I mean,
But
like separate here.
That's a different place. What I'm talking about is this eastern province of Saudi Arabia. So while there are people living near the coasts of the Persian Gulf, there are very few people, or almost no one, who lives in this eastern province of Saudi Arabia. However, on the other side of Saudi Arabia, on the Red Sea, is the area that's called the Hejaz, and that area has mountains, it has forests, and it has wild animals. So that's very different from the way that people think about Saudi Arabia. The capital and the largest city of Saudi Arabia is called Riyadh.
Riyadh.
All right. So that's where they have the most skyscrapers. Some very famous buildings and beautiful buildings are there. Now, I don't really expect you guys to know the whole history of Saudi Arabia. There's a couple of very important things that every educated person should know about Saudi Arabia. Now, probably the most important thing is that it is the birthplace of the religion of Islam. Now, do you guys remember much about what I've told you before about Islam? Do you remember what you call people who practice that religion of Islam? What do you call them? Do you remember what they're called, people who practice Islam? They are called
Muslims.
Muslims. Very good, Ian. And do you remember the name of the God that they praise?
Allah.
Allah. And do you remember the name of their holy book?
Bible.
No, the Bible is for Christians. Their holy book is called the
Quran.
The Quran. Very good. And do you remember their prophet? The person who began the religion of Islam and who Muslims believe was spoken to by an angel who gave him the word of God. What was the name of that prophet? His name was
Muhammad.
Muhammad. Okay, so you guys did pretty good. You remember a lot of things. Now, the reason Saudi Arabia is very important in the Muslim religion is that Muhammad was born in the area that is now Saudi Arabia. He was born in the most holy city to Muslims, which is called Mecca. And Mecca is where Muhammad said that he received the word of God from the archangel Gabriel. And he went to the leaders of Mecca and explained to them that he didn't think that they were praying to the right God or gods. They did not like that very much, and they kicked him out of Mecca. And he then went to Medina, and that's the second holiest city in the Muslim world. Medina is where the religion of Islam really got started and started to become powerful. And that is where Muhammad eventually died and is buried. So those two cities, are Mecca and Medina, are very important to all Muslims. And part of being in the Muslim religion is that every Muslim at some point in their life is supposed to do a journey called a Hajj. The Hajj means a journey to Mecca, and you have to do certain specific things when you get to Mecca. You have to do certain walks. It's like what we call a pilgrimage. You remember a pilgrimage? That's the word for a religious journey. And of course, the Hajj is very easy for people who have a lot of money, and it's very easy for people who live close to Mecca. But some people have to come from very, very far away in the world, and they have to save up money for their whole lives just to make this Hajj to Mecca. So that's one very important thing you should always remember about Saudi Arabia, is that it's the birthplace of the Islam religion, which is one of the largest religions of the world, with somewhere between, just a second, somewhere between 1 billion and 2 billion people who practice that religion.
Wow.
Yeah, what's your question?
It's like, so Christian and Muslim are like the biggest religions, right?
Christianity and Islam are the names of the religions. So yes, those are two of the biggest religions. If you consider Buddhism a religion, some might consider it a philosophy, but if you consider that a religion, that would possibly be close to, and Hinduism as well, just because there are so many people in China and India that there are probably close to 1 billion people of each of those who would consider themselves Buddhist or Hindu. So I couldn't tell you exactly how many, but I guess those would be the 4 biggest. Christianity, Islam, Buddhism, and Hinduism would be the four biggest religion. Now, in terms of the country of Saudi Arabia, for most of history that we know it, there was actually no one country here. It was just a bunch of groups of people, you might call them tribes, and they were in control of different areas. And one thing that happened about 300 years ago was that a certain family started to become very powerful. They were called the family of Saud. And part of the reason they became powerful was they became connected and joined their power with a group of religious leaders. It was an Islam group, but a very strict Islam group called Wahhab. And so Saud and Wahhab kind of joined forces, and that meant that the Sauds were basically supported this very strict interpretation of Islam, which is called the Wahhabi sect of Islam.
So they're powerful because since they connected tribes, they're powerful because if you connect them,
right,
you have a big, gigantic army.
Right, that's basically what happened.
Is that how Saudi got its name?
So that is how Saudi got its name, but that's not the end of the story. So even though they were a powerful group, they weren't the only powerful group. There was a very, very, even much more powerful empire that came from the north and basically controlled the northern part. Now, do you have any idea who that empire might have been?
Genghis Khan?
No, that was Genghis Khan.
The Ottoman!
That's right. It was the Ottoman Empire. It was the Ottoman Empire that came from what is now Turkey. And so during the 17th, well, maybe the 18th, 19th centuries, the Ottoman Empire was controlling the northern part of Saudi Arabia. They were too strong, really, for any native Arabian tribes to resist. Now, the question is, what happened to the Ottoman Empire? Do you guys remember?
After World War I, it broke up because it was with Germany.
Right.
Oh, so that was a lot of years ago, before World War I was started.
It was.
Then, when the World War I started, it got broke up, and that's how the northern part got its freedom.
Right. So what happened was the Ottoman Empire allied itself with Germany and Austria-Hungary. They were defeated by the Allied powers, and the Ottoman Empire, as part of the conditions of their surrender, had to relinquish their claim on all these Middle Eastern countries. We learned about Israel, Lebanon, Syria, and Jordan, but it was also Saudi Arabia. Once the Ottoman Empire was out of the picture, that gave the Saud family, the Saud army, the chance to consolidate their power. They had to fight some different other powerful families, but in the end, the Saud family won. And since I believe it was the year 1932, that was when Saudi Arabia became its own country. And ever since then, the family of Saud has ruled the entire country as kings. Now, do you remember what kind of government that's called? When you have a king who then hands down power to his son. It's kingdoms, but what there's a word for the kind of government it is. It's not a democracy, it's not socialism,
Capitalism?
it's not capitalism necessarily. It is a
Monastery.
no.
What's a monastery?
That's where priests live and pray.
Monarchy.
It's a monarchy. So Saudi Arabia is a monarchy, and it's not like the monarchies we learned about in Europe, where the king, the royal families are no longer really in charge of government.
Like
in
the United Kingdom.
In Saudi Arabia, right. In Saudi Arabia, the monarchs still have absolute control over government, and they cannot be voted out by the people. There's nothing that can be done to take power away from the Saudi monarchy. And
it's like this dictatorship.
well, you know, I'm not sure if exactly how much it's like a dictatorship, and I don't want to make judgments like that about a country that I've never visited and don't know that much about, but I would certainly consider that to be a possibility. It's certainly not what we would call a democracy. Now, the other thing is that they are still closely associated with the Wahhabi religious interpretation of Islam. So the Islam in Saudi Arabia is very strict. They have very strong rules about what people can do. Even the kings have to follow the law of Islam, which is called Sharia law. And women are discouraged from being alone, from traveling without a man, from driving, and from showing their bodies to some extent. They generally wear clothes that cover almost all their skin, but not necessarily always their face, like in some places, but some women will do that. Their families choose that for them, or they choose to do that themselves.
And then they wear those goggles.
Now, the other thing that happened when Saudi Arabia, around the same time that Saudi Arabia became its own country, is they discovered something very important to the world in Saudi Arabia. Do you guys have any idea what that was?
Religion?
It was oil. Saudi Arabia has possibly the largest oil deposits of any country in the Middle East. And right around that time is after they had invented cars and airplanes and lots of machinery that needed oil and gas to run. And they had to buy it from countries like Saudi Arabia. And suddenly Saudi Arabia became a very, very rich country. And that is how they were able to build a lot of skyscrapers. The people who controlled the oil became very wealthy. They had all the things that come with wealth, which is very good hospitals, very good
very good cafeterias.
Very good cafeterias. Very good schools, yeah. So,
and very good at everything. That's
right. So they have a very high standard of living in Saudi Arabia. And that's largely because of oil. And they also became very strong because they could buy a lot of weapons and pay for a lot of armies. And that helped them become one of the 3 strongest countries in the Middle East, along with Iran and Turkey. Yeah, it's still a very rich country with a high standard of living. So that's the things I want you to remember the most about Saudi Arabia, is the birthplace of Islam, the holiest place for all Muslims, and the discovery of oil that made them a very rich country. I want to do another video. It's going to be a little bit about Arabia and what it was like before Islam. So remember, Islam began in the 7th century, I believe. So that was almost 1500 years ago.
Before we understand or try to understand Prophet Muhammad or the Islamic civilization, we gotta understand the world that Islam was born in. At the time, there were 2 empires that were dominating Europe and the Middle East. The Sassanid Empire in Persia and the Byzantine Empire in Asia Minor. These 2 empires had been fighting for centuries and were just exhausted out of their minds. Arabia was a hot desert, and in a pre-oil world, there were no valuable resources in Arabia. There was no water, no agriculture, no nothing basically. That's why no empire was ever interested in conquering it. Not because they couldn't, but because they didn't have a reason to. Even after the rise of Islam, most Islamic empires only conquered the holy cities of Mecca and Medina and left the rest of Arabia untouched. Inside Arabia, there was chaos. Well, mostly chaos. More so-called civilized people would have called the Arabs barbarians, but that's not entirely true or fair. There were many tribes around Arabia. One of those tribes, Quraysh, lived in Mecca. This was Muhammad's tribe, and it's the one we gotta talk about. Mecca was the site to an ancient shrine called Kaaba. This shrine was said to have been built by the great prophet Ibrahim or Abraham. Ibrahim also did something that would change the destiny of Mecca. He declared it haram, meaning it was forbidden to conduct violence there, or the wrath of God would get you and all that. Even though most Arabs were pagans, they still believed in this one great God called Allah, which comes from the word Alillah, meaning the God, with a capital G. Anyways, this declaration was used centuries after Abraham to make Mecca a very attractive place to conduct business. This was the only place where you could buy and sell things without the risk of losing your head in a minor dispute. Meccans, however, went one step further. They invited all of Arabia, all the tribes in it, to come and place their idols in the shrine, meaning all of the gods that were worshipped in Arabia were now collected in a single place.
So we got just one video left, and I wanted to show you about the part of Saudi Arabia that is not desert, that most people don't know about, which is the Asir Mountains, which are in the southwest of Saudi Arabia, in part of the area known as the Hejaz. And we're going to see this Western lady who is a traveler, and she is exploring a village.
And her name is Eva Zubek.
Yep, looks like it.
The main event of today is going to be going down this super hyper twisty mountain road towards the village of Roja Alma, also known as the Gingerbread Village. Better get going. Car, don't fail me. Here in the south of Saudi Arabia, the mountain roads are infamous. Steep, laced with extremely sharp turns, and a culture of driving which, from what I experienced, is all about who gets to dominate the road first. Oh, and the views can be a serious distraction from the driving too. Okay, this road is definitely not for the faint-hearted. It is very, very twisty, very sharp turns, very steep as well, and there is quite a lot of cars on this road as well, so you gotta be careful because other drivers are as much of a risk as you are. And before you come here, make sure that you double and triple check your brakes because you will need them. looks like these guys were busy constructing a gate of sorts here to this village. I mean, I'm not really surprised because with the sort of tourism push that Saudi Arabia is putting forward, all these things are being renovated, all these places and villages and cultural heritage sites are being revamped and redeveloped. So it's not surprising to see, but I am very curious to see how many people will come here in the future. And will Saudi Arabia really become a popular tourism destination in the Middle East? I mean, let's not forget that just under a year ago, less than a year ago, half a year ago, you couldn't get a visa to Saudi Arabia. And now, e-visas, and in some cases, I think even visas on arrival. So yeah, things are changing. Things are changing in Saudi Arabia. For now, we're gonna take a look at some traditional stuff. Some of the stuff that has remained the same over the last few centuries.
I'm on my way to Rijal Alma, a historic village and one of the main tourist attractions in the region. This place is said to be super unique and has been drawing in a pretty sizable audience of Instagrammers. Yup, it's that photogenic.
Oh look, there they are, just up on that hill. Wow! Woo! We've arrived! Wow, look at that! Stunning! Absolutely stunning!
Yes.
I've never seen anything like this before. Wow!
Yep.
The history of Rijal Alma goes back over 1,000 years. In terms of the architecture, it bears a lot of similarities to villages in Yemen. After all, these two countries shared a culture for centuries. This is it, Rijal Alma, the historic gingerbread house village. And I'm here with Nara and Amin, who are also filming. And we're going to be taking a tour around this very unique, spectacular, and ultra charming village.
Yeah, but there's no power lines. So they would think that they're poor and don't want to conquer it.
Well, not every country has power lines.
Let's go.
Countries bury
Are
their
they safe here?
electric lines
Yalla.
under the ground.
I know, like
We thought we might be the only ones here, but we were wrong. Plenty of domestic tourists flowed in and out of the village throughout the day.
Yeah, look how they're dressed.
This place is so magical. It honestly looks like a fairy tale village. Like something out of the Brothers Grimm stories that I was raised on personally. I mean, just look at these buildings. So the mud and the stone, it kind of looks like the gingerbread, and the super colored windows. They're just like the icing sugar. Just so cool, so stunning. I've never seen a place like this. Frankly, this place made me feel like a kid in Disneyland. I just wanted to touch and feel everything.
I don't think the windows are made out of stuff, but can you see the stones on the walls?
But wandering around the outside just didn't feel like it was enough. I wanted to see more.
Hey Nara, what do you think?
I want to live here.
Yeah?
Once upon a time, not so long ago, this is where the women of the village actually used to sit and look out the windows and, well, watch the world pass by, right? Now, I don't think anybody actually lives in this very village, right?
Well, they live in the village, but not in these ginger houses.
Okay, this is quite a beautiful vantage point. I mean, imagine sitting here, shaded. It's pretty cool. You know, these rocks are, these stones or these walls are pretty solid.
And cold from the inside as well.
And cold from the inside. Super hot outside, by the way, guys. About over 30 degrees outside, and it's winter, right? But here it's nice and cool, and you can look out the window at these mountains. Beautiful.
One thing that we're missing in Saudi Arabia videos is we don't have a lot of videos of people that are actually made by people in Saudi Arabia about Saudi Arabia, like we've seen from other countries.
Oh, like people in Saudi Arabia, like people who live in Saudi Arabia are actually like explaining.
Yeah, we don't see that like we saw for Senegal and Lebanon and some other countries, because those are really the best, but maybe I just couldn't find them on YouTube.
African countries.
African countries are really, really cool as well. So anyway, before we stop, let's just go over what you guys remember. You guys remember what the capital of Saudi Arabia is?
Riyadh.
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 And it's also the biggest city in Saudi Arabia, and it's the second biggest city in the Middle East after Cairo, which is the capital of Egypt. And do you remember the holy city?
The Quran.
The Quran is the holy book of
Mecca.
Islam. Mecca is the holy city, and it's holy, the holiest city because who was born there?
Wait, what's Muhammad?
Muhammad.
And this is the second one.
Right, and
Medina.
Medina. And that's where he moved to start his religion and where he died and was buried.
Saudi Arabia, the Arabian Peninsula is all
What? I don't know.
Remember their religion?
Right. Oh,
They're
they're all
all
Muslim.
Except
Muslim.
for Israel.
Well, right, but Israel's not part of the Arabian Peninsula, but it's in the Middle East. But almost every country in the Middle East, except for Israel, is mostly Muslim.
Dad.
Yeah.
Is there men in Oman? Is Saudi Arabia enemies with Yemen and Oman?
You know, that's interesting you should ask. I'm not really sure about how things are going with Oman, but right now there's kind of like a war going on between Saudi Arabia and Yemen, which is also like a war inside of Yemen. And it's very, very complicated. It involves Iran as well. And we will probably talk about that when we talk about Yemen at some point in the future, but it's probably not worth getting into when we talk about Saudi Arabia because there's so much other stuff to talk about with Saudi Arabia.
Not talking about the wars.
Right. So the last thing I want to do is talk a little about the language in Saudi Arabia. So do you have any idea what language they speak in Saudi Arabia?
No.
Well, it's the same language, basically the same language that they speak.
Arabian?
Not Arabian, but Arabic.
Arabic.
That's the language.
Because they're Arabia?
Right, they're Arabs.
Arabic.
And they speak Arabic throughout the Arab world,
You just forgot the it.
in the Middle East and all across North Africa. And most of the Middle East, they speak Arabic. So when you want to say hello in Arabic, it's always good to know a few words when we go there to one of those countries, and you can be polite and speak a few words of their language. The way they say hello is
As-salamu alaykum.
Al-salam alaikum.
How can you read it?
Well, because
alaikum.
I've said it before, Cleo, we've been to countries where they speak
Dad,
Arabic
is
before.
it like as-salamu
Like Morocco.
alaykum?
Al-salam alaikum. Do you want to try it?
As-salamu alaykum.
Okay. And
As-salamu alaykum.
if you want to say yes, you say naam. Do you want to try it?
Nam.
And if
You
you
wanna
want to
say
say
no?
no, you say la.
La. How about goodbye?
Goodbye looks like, I've never said that before, but it looks something like ma'al salama.
Ma al-salama. Oh, ma.
And a very important one that you would need to know wherever country you go to, you should always know how to say thank you. And in Arabic, thank you is shukran.
Shukran. How about Shukran? Fadla. Shukran.
And
min
if you want to know
fadlik.
how much something costs, it looks like kum.
Daddy, why are there two kinds of please?
Well, because you say it differently to a man
Oh.
or to a woman.
So when you say thank you to
Right.
when you say please to a man, you say mean
Fadlak.
fadlak.
And if you say it to a woman, you say
I know it's mean fadli.
right.
Fadlik.
And if you want to say my name is Ian, how do you say my name is Ian?
It's me, Cleo.
That's Cleo. That's my name is Cleo. And
Ismi.
Ian? How do you
It's
say it?
me, Ian.
Ismi
Now
Ian.
you.
Ismi Tony.
It's me, but.
Okay. So, that I think is probably enough to remember about Saudi Arabia. And what do you guys think of the country? Do you think it's interesting?
Yup.
Do you guys want to go there someday? Do you think we should go there someday
I think we should.
and visit?
Yeah. But do I have to wear those black clothes?
You know, I think it depends on how old you are. They don't have to be black, but I think you're probably going to need to cover your hair And you definitely need to cover your arms and your legs. Now, I don't think they care too much what boys wear, so I think you're going to be okay. But you and mommy would have to wear definitely some kind of clothes that cover all your legs all the way down to the ankles and your
Daddy,
arms all the way down
remember
to
that
your
snow how we went to Colorado? It was pink.
Okay, I don't think that would be right for there.
Wait,
Okay.
it was bye. Bye.
Okay, so that's all for now for Saudi Arabia. Okay.
Goodbye.